The sky turned an unusual orange that morning, and Lena Carter noticed it while walking to school. The air smelled sharp like metal and rain. Birds circled high above, but something about their flight seemed wrong, restless. Lena tugged at her backpack and hurried along, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling creeping up her spine. Today was just another school day, or so she thought. In class, she sat at her usual desk near the window, her notebook open. Numbers and equations stared back at her from the page, but Lena had no interest in math. Instead, she grabbed a pencil and began to draw. Dragons. Not simple, childish dragons, but long, elegant creatures with sharp wings, glowing eyes, and scales that seemed almost alive on the paper. She added swirls of energy around them, trails of light that made them look as if they were flying. She smiled. It was fun, and for a moment, everything else melted away. Lena, stop daydreaming and finish your homework. Mrs. Thorne's voice cut sharply across the room. Lena quickly scribbled a few numbers in the margin but kept drawing, hiding her excitement. She didn't care about the warning, her dragons needed her. Outside, a sudden shadow passed across the playground. Lena looked up, blinking, thinking it was a cloud. But the shadow moved too fast. It had wings. Massive wings. And there was more than one. Panic began to ripple through the school as a loud roar shook the walls. Students screamed and ducked under desks. Lena froze, her pencil slipping from her hand. She could see it now. A dragon. Not a toy, not a drawing. Real. Its scales shimmered like her pencil strokes, its eyes glowing the same color she had chosen for her dragon's own eyes. It hovered for a moment, then landed outside, crushing the asphalt slightly under its claws. The school doors slammed shut automatically. Security alarms blared, red lights flashing in every hallway. Students clutched each other, whispering, crying. Teachers tried to organize everyone, but the fear was too strong. Lena couldn't move. Her dragons were real. They were here. And they were looking at her. More dragons arrived, their shapes identical to the ones she had drawn. Some were enormous, wings stretching across the entire playground. Others were smaller, like the ones she had doodled in the corners of her notebook. Every dragon stopped moving as soon as it reached the edge of the schoolyard. They didn't roar, didn't attack, they just stared at her classroom. Lena. Mrs. Thorne's voice shouted from across the room. Go to the emergency hall. But Lena didn't listen. She could not take her eyes off the dragons outside. They were beautiful, terrifying, and intelligent. She had never imagined anything like this. She had drawn them for fun, not for this. Outside, parents and police gathered, pointing cameras and shouting orders. Helicopters circled overhead, their blades creating gusts that barely moved the dragons. Lena noticed something strange. The dragons did not react to the humans, the noise, or the flashing lights. They seemed to be waiting for her. Her heart pounded in her chest. Questions raced through her mind. How could they know about her drawings? Why were they here outside her school? She remembered the little symbols she had added on one dragon's wings, thinking they were just decoration. The symbols now seemed to glow faintly on the dragon's scales. A low rumble came from the largest dragon. It knelt slightly, lowering its head as if bowing. Lena blinked. No one else noticed. The other dragons mirrored the gesture. It was deliberate, not instinct. She shivered, realizing that somehow they recognized her. The principal's voice came over the loudspeaker, trembling. All students remain calm. Please stay in your classrooms. The words meant nothing. Lena's mind was racing too fast to hear them. She picked up her notebook and looked at the drawings again. Every dragon outside matched one on the page exactly. Every line, every glow, every curve. It was impossible. A small dragon tapped the window lightly with its snout. Lena jumped back, almost dropping her pencil. The dragon's eyes, a bright amber, reflected her own fear and fascination. It tilted its head, studying her like she was the important one. She swallowed hard, realizing that her doodles were more than art. Somehow she had called them here. The teachers tried to maintain order, but students crowded near the windows, gasping, pointing, whispering. No one could believe their eyes. News crews outside filmed everything, broadcasting live to the city. Lena didn't notice. She could only stare at the dragons, feeling a mix of awe and guilt. She hadn't meant for this to happen. Then a sound came from the largest dragon, a deep, resonant hum. It vibrated through the walls, the floors, and into Lena's chest. She felt it in her bones. It was not a roar. It was a message. And though she did not understand it fully, she felt a strange warmth, as if the dragon were speaking to her alone, saying, "It is time." Sirens wailed. Helicopters hovered closer. Security drones activated, moving toward the dragons, but none dared approach. Each drone froze when it came near, its sensors unable to process what it was seeing. The dragons did not fight. They only waited, their glowing eyes locked on Lena. Her classmates finally noticed the connection. "She drew them," one whispered. "Look at her notebook." Others leaned closer, seeing that the dragons matched every sketch. Whispers turned into stunned silence. Lena's heart raced. She had never shared her drawings with anyone. How could they know? The principal finally spoke, his voice trembling. "Miss Carter, we need you to come with us." Lena hesitated, notebook clutched to her chest. The dragons outside lowered their heads slightly again as if giving permission. Lena took a deep breath and nodded. Whatever was happening, she realized it was bigger than her, bigger than the school, bigger than the city. As she stepped toward the doors, the dragons outside shifted slightly, forming a loose circle around the school. Not threatening, not aggressive. Protective. She looked back once, seeing the small dragon at the window tap its nose in what seemed like a gentle goodbye, or maybe a promise. Lena didn't know which. The world outside the windows was no longer the same. Shadows of dragons stretched across streets and rooftops, blending with the morning sun. And Lena knew, with a certainty she could not explain, that her life had changed forever. Something she had drawn for fun had awakened something ancient. Something alive. She walked through the hallway with trembling steps, notebook pressed against her chest, the dragon's hum still vibrating faintly in her ears. Outside, the city held its breath. Humanity had not yet realized what had landed in their midst. And Lena, the girl who had drawn dragons for fun, was at the very center of it all. The air grew tense. Something larger than fear hung over the school. Lena didn't know what would happen next, but one thought pulsed clearly in her mind: I drew them. And now they are here. Lena Carter was led into a large white room filled with blinking machines and busy scientists. Her notebook was still clutched tightly against her chest. The dragons waited outside, their enormous wings folded, eyes fixed on the building. They had not moved since the morning, and somehow, Lena felt they were watching her more than anyone else. A tall man in a lab coat stepped forward. "Lena, my name is Dr. Callahan. We need to understand what happened today. Can you tell us how you drew these dragons?" Lena shook her head. "I don't know. I just like drawing. I didn't mean for anything to happen." Dr. Callahan frowned but gestured to the screens around the room. Each screen showed different parts of the city, and on every screen, dragons were still hovering near schools, hospitals, and playgrounds. People were panicking. Some pointed weapons, but the dragons didn't attack. They only watched. One of the scientists, a young woman with short red hair, tapped at a keyboard. "Their energy readings are off the charts. This isn't biological. It's like they are made of living light and matter. Nothing we know matches this." Lena looked at the screens, then down at her drawings. Her pencil strokes had been random, playful. Now she wondered if they had been something more. Suddenly, a soft hum filled the room. Lena looked up. The largest dragon outside, the one she had first seen, lowered its head and the air seemed to vibrate. Light ran along its scales in patterns that matched the symbols Lena had drawn in her notebook. Her heart skipped a beat. Somehow they were responding to her drawings. Dr. Callahan stepped closer. "Lena, they're communicating with you. We think your drawings acted as a signal. But how, we don't know." Lena swallowed hard. "A signal? I was just drawing for fun." Another dragon tapped the glass wall gently with a claw, and Lena felt a strange warmth pulse through the room. The hum grew louder, almost like a voice speaking in a language she did not understand, yet somehow she could feel the meaning. "We came because you called." The thought was not in words but in feeling, and Lena felt tears prick her eyes. Outside, more dragons had arrived. Their shapes were identical to the ones she had drawn in the margins of her notebook. Small ones flitted around the playground, testing their wings. Large ones perched on rooftops, stretching and flexing their claws. None were hostile. They were careful, patient, as if they were waiting for someone to understand them. Dr. Callahan motioned to the security guards. "We must contain them. They could be dangerous." But the guards hesitated. Every time they approached, the dragons shifted, moving with uncanny intelligence to block them without harming anyone. It was clear, they were not here to fight. A small dragon hopped onto a low wall and looked directly at Lena. Its eyes were a bright amber, matching the drawing she had made with so much care. It let out a gentle hum that resonated in her chest. Lena stepped closer and whispered, I didn't mean for this. I just drew you." The dragon tilted its head and nudged her notebook with its snout. One of the scientists gasped. "Look at the energy readings. They're interacting with her mind. This is impossible. Lena felt a rush of fear and wonder. She had always imagined dragons in stories and games, but this was real. They were not just creatures. They were ancient beings, and somehow they had answered her call. Dr. Callahan frowned and turned to his team. We need to understand them. They came here on their own and they aren't hostile. If we make the wrong move, he didn't finish the sentence. The consequences were clear. Meanwhile, Lena noticed a pattern. The dragons outside were arranged in a circle, their heads pointed toward the building. The symbols on their scales flickered in time with the hum, and each flicker seemed to correspond to one of her drawings. She realized that somehow her imagination had reached across the world, or even beyond it, and they had come. A heavy silence filled the lab as a new dragon landed gently on the school roof. It was enormous, scales glowing with soft, golden light, eyes wise and ancient. Lena felt drawn to it. It lowered its head slowly and a pulse of warmth and sound passed through the glass. We protect. We wait. You brought us. The feeling was strong, gentle, and clear. Dr. Callahan stepped back, astonished. They recognize her as the one who drew them. Lena nodded slowly. I didn't mean to. I just drew them. The dragon outside lifted its wings slightly, creating a shadow that stretched over the schoolyard like a protective dome. The red-haired scientist whispered, They aren't here to destroy anything. They're here because of her. They trust her. Lena felt a mixture of fear and pride. She had always thought her drawings were small and meaningless, but now she understood they had power, strange power she didn't yet understand. Outside, a group of children cautiously stepped onto the playground. The dragons lowered their heads, wings folding back. None of the children screamed. They reached out slowly and the dragons stayed still, patient. Lena realized something astonishing. These dragons had chosen her world not because it was strong or advanced, but because someone had shown them kindness, even unknowingly. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the walls and Lena's body. A gentle warmth filled the room, as if the dragons were sharing their presence with her. She could feel their curiosity, their memories, and their calm wisdom. They were not monsters. They were guides, protectors, and something older than anything humanity had ever seen. Dr. Callahan turned to Lena, voice trembling. You summoned them. Somehow. We need to study this carefully. But first we need to make sure they stay safe. And that humanity doesn't panic. Lena nodded. She understood. She had brought them here. Now she had a responsibility. A small dragon hopped closer to the glass, peering at Lena with intelligent eyes. It tapped once, twice, then pressed its snout against the window. Lena pressed her hand against it. For the first time she felt a connection, a bond she could not explain. They had answered her call. They had come. Outside, the city buzzed with confusion, fear, and awe. Helicopters hovered, but the dragons ignored them. Security forces held back, unsure of what to do. Everyone could see one thing clearly. These creatures were extraordinary, unlike anything humans had encountered. Lena held her notebook close, feeling its weight. She hadn't meant to start a global event. She had just liked drawing dragons. But now, standing in a lab with the creatures she had imagined staring at her, she knew one thing. This was only the beginning. And the dragons, ancient, wise, and alive, were waiting for her to understand them. The hum settled into a soft, steady vibration and Lena closed her eyes. She felt a strange calm in the chaos. Somehow her drawings had reached them. Somehow they had come. And somehow humanity's first real contact with the unknown would begin with a human girl who drew dragons for fun. Lena Carter sat in the research lab, her notebook open but untouched. The dragons outside had not moved for hours, but their presence was impossible to ignore. Even through the thick glass, Lena could feel their energy, soft, warm, and intelligent. They were not attacking. They were simply waiting. That thought should have made her feel safe. Instead, it made her uneasy. The news on every screen in the lab was chaos. People around the world panicked as videos of dragons landing near schools, hospitals, and playgrounds went viral. Some governments called them a threat and began mobilizing military forces. Drones hovered near the creatures, guns trained, but the dragons ignored them. Each step the soldiers took seemed carefully watched, every movement measured. They had power, yes, but they did not use it to harm. Dr. Callahan paced nervously. I don't understand it, he muttered. They have technology, energy, and strength beyond anything we can comprehend. And yet they do not attack. He stopped and looked at Lena. Why are they here? Why only near schools and children? Lena swallowed hard. I think it's me, she whispered. I drew them. They came because of me. I didn't do anything else. A tall dragon with golden scales stepped closer to the lab window, eyes locking onto Lena. The air vibrated with a soft hum, almost like a greeting. Lena could feel it inside her chest. She reached out almost without thinking. "I didn't know you would come," she said. "I just drew you." The dragon's hum grew slightly louder, and a pulse of warmth ran through her hand even through the glass. It was not threatening. It was patient, gentle, and wise. Yet outside not everyone felt the same. Military helicopters circled higher, sirens blared, and orders were shouted into radios. People were afraid, and fear had a way of spreading faster than understanding. Later, Lena was taken to a secure observation room where she could watch the dragons and speak to them safely. A smaller dragon, no taller than a pony, lowered its head, eyes soft and amber, and Lena felt an odd connection. She realized that they were not here to attack or conquer. They were trying to communicate. They had come because someone, her, had shown curiosity and kindness. Dr. Callahan and the scientists tried to explain the creatures to her. "Their biology is impossible," said one scientist, tapping at a screen showing the largest dragon outside. "They are made of living energy as much as matter. They can alter their size, their density, even their appearance. And yet, they are calm. They are cautious. This isn't aggression." Lena nodded slowly. "They are like teachers," she said. "Not fighters. They just watch and wait." But the outside world did not see it that way. Fear grew quickly. Some politicians demanded immediate strikes. Others called for evacuation. Rumors spread that the dragons were dangerous weapons, sent to destroy humanity. Lena tried to explain, but adults refused to listen. Their fear was louder than her words. One afternoon, the largest dragon, whose name Lena would later learn was Aurelian Vex, lowered itself in front of the school. Its wings stretched wide, and the sunlight reflected off the golden scales, casting long shadows over the playground. Children outside froze, unsure what to do. Soldiers raised their weapons, trembling, but Aurelian did not move aggressively. Instead, it tilted its head slightly, observing. Lena watched through the glass and realized that the dragon's behavior was deliberate. It was showing restraint, even in the face of potential harm. It could have destroyed everything around it in an instant, but it chose not to. Its patience was incredible. The news reporters outside shouted questions. "Are these dragons safe? Are they friendly? Do they plan to attack?" Lena felt frustration rise in her chest. They were missing the point entirely. The dragons were gentle, cautious, and full of intelligence. They were waiting for humans to understand them, but humans only saw threat. Dr. Callahan sighed. "It's fear," he said softly. "Fear is always faster than reason." He turned to Lena. "They see that fear. And yet they don't attack. That is remarkable." Later that evening, Lena had a private moment with Aurelian Vex. The dragon lowered its massive head so she could see its eyes. A pulse of warmth ran through the room. Lena felt memories, not in words but in images, of distant worlds filled with dragons and humans, civilizations that had been destroyed by fear and misunderstanding. She gasped. "They don't want war," she whispered. "They just don't want to be hurt." The dragon's hum responded softly, almost like a sigh. It was a gentle message full of trust and caution. Lena realized how much they had endured over the centuries. They had seen planets rise and fall, watched species destroy themselves, and now they had come to her world. Not to fight, not to conquer, but to see if humanity could be different. Outside, soldiers finally lowered some weapons, though warships remained on alert. People whispered in the streets, some in awe, some in terror. Lena could feel the tension building. She knew that one wrong move could trigger chaos. But she also knew something incredible. The dragons would not strike first. They had patience. They had choice. That night, Lena returned to her room, clutching her notebook. She drew again, carefully, adding small dragons in the margins and tiny symbols she had never noticed before. She imagined them flying gently, watching over the city. When she placed the notebook near the window, she felt the familiar warmth, the hum of dragons responding to her thoughts. Fear was everywhere, but the dragons remained calm. They were gentle creatures, wise and strong, showing humanity what restraint and intelligence looked like. Lena understood something that no one else seemed to. These dragons were not enemies. They were the opposite. They were protectors, watchers, guides. And for the first time, she realized that humanity's first choice would matter. Would they respond with fear and weapons, or would they see the dragons as allies, not threats? Lena's hand hovered over her notebook. She knew that what she drew next might matter more than anything else. Outside, the city slept uneasily, but the dragons stayed, patient and silent, waiting for humanity to understand them, and hoping someone would. Lena Carter, a simple girl who drew dragons for fun, understood one thing clearly: the world had never seen beings like this before, and it was up to humans to decide whether fear or understanding would win. The hum of the dragons vibrated faintly in her chest, a reminder that they were here, alive and patient, waiting for humanity to see the truth, that gentleness can be stronger than fear, and patience can be more powerful than weapons. And Lena knew she would help them show it. The sun rose slowly, casting long shadows across the city as helicopters and drones hovered in the sky. Lena Carter stood in a secure observation room, watching the dragons outside. They had not moved from their positions near the schools and playgrounds, yet their presence filled the city with tension. Soldiers and officials were ready for anything, and the news cameras captured every moment, broadcasting the dragons' shapes and movements to the world. Lena clutched her notebook tightly. Inside were sketches of dragons, symbols, and patterns she had never fully understood. Somehow they had reached the dragons across space, and now the world was watching the consequences of her innocent drawings. She had drawn them for fun, for curiosity, and now everything depended on how humanity reacted. Dr. Callahan stood next to her, nervously adjusting his glasses. "The world's leaders are meeting," he said. "They're deciding what to do. Strike? Communicate? Evacuate?" Lena shook her head. "They don't understand," she whispered. "The dragons aren't here to fight. They're waiting." Outside, the dragons shifted slightly, folding and stretching their massive wings. They stayed calm, even as fighter jets flew above them, weapons pointed. Lena could feel the hum from the dragons, vibrating softly, as if they were trying to speak to her again. She pressed her hand to the glass and whispered, "Please, show them I didn't mean anything bad." News reports showed a city divided. Some called the dragons dangerous invaders. Others saw them as intelligent beings, possibly sentinels of a greater universe. Lena realized that fear was spreading faster than understanding. One wrong move could start a war that no one would survive. A small dragon outside hopped onto the playground, carefully lowering its head toward a group of children who had wandered too close. The children froze, unsure of what to do. Soldiers shouted warnings, but the dragon didn't move aggressively. Instead, it spread its wings slightly, as if creating a protective barrier around them. The cameras captured the moment, and for the first time, the world saw that the dragons were not enemies. Lena's heart pounded. She had never felt more responsible in her life. It was not just about her drawings anymore. She was the bridge between humanity and these ancient, wise creatures. If she failed, fear could destroy everything. If she succeeded, humanity might gain something greater than weapons or power, a chance to learn. Finally, the decision was made to allow Lena to speak to the Global Council. She was nervous as she stepped into a room filled with leaders, military officials, and scientists. Cameras recorded every word. She held her notebook carefully. I didn't draw them to control them," she said, voice trembling. "I drew them because I thought they looked lonely. Because I thought, maybe someone would be their friend." A hush fell over the room. No one moved. Lena continued. "They are not dangerous. They are intelligent. They can feel, think, and understand. They came here because someone, me, reached out in curiosity and kindness. They are not our enemies. They are our teachers, our protectors. They waited for us to see that." Outside, the dragons shifted slightly. The largest dragon, Aurelian Vex, lowered its head, and the hum filled the city. People felt it through their windows, through their streets, through the vibrations of the buildings. It was not threatening. It was patient. It was waiting for a choice that humanity had to make. Leaders whispered among themselves. Military commanders argued, some saying to strike, some saying to stand down. Lena's voice echoed softly in the room. "Fear is easy. Understanding is harder. But if we choose fear, we destroy what is precious. If we choose understanding, we gain something we have never had before." On the screens outside, children began drawing dragons in the dirt, in parks, in their homes. They sketched wings, scales, and glowing eyes. Slowly they started showing kindness rather than fear. The dragons responded. They lifted into the sky, not to attack, but to show memories. Images of destroyed civilizations, planets where fear had caused war, and places where kindness had saved lives appeared in beams of light across the clouds. The world watched in awe. Fear still lingered, but the message was clear. These dragons had experienced everything and were giving humanity a choice. They were patient, waiting to see if humans would act with fear or with understanding. Lena took a deep breath. "They can help us," she said. "They can teach us about energy, healing, space travel. They will not harm us if we do not harm them. We have to choose wisely. One of the council members finally stood. If we follow her advice, we risk appearing weak. But if we strike, we risk everything. He looked at the other leaders and slowly the decision formed. Weapons were withdrawn. Jets returned to base. Cities paused evacuations. Humanity held its breath. Outside, the dragons lifted together, forming a circle above the city. Their wings reflected sunlight like shields of gold and silver. Lena watched, amazed, as beams of light and warmth pulsed through the streets. The children drawing outside smiled. Parents stopped shouting. Soldiers lowered their guns. The world paused just long enough to understand. Lena opened her notebook. She added a few more small drawings, gentle dragons watching over people, trails of light connecting them to the humans below. Outside she could feel the hum responding. The dragons had seen the choice. They had seen the moment when humanity could act with wisdom instead of fear. Aurelian Vex hovered above, wings outstretched, eyes glowing softly. Lena felt a pulse of energy run through her chest. She understood now that her role was only beginning. The dragons had come because of curiosity and kindness, but it was up to humanity to honor that trust. The world had chosen to pause. Not out of weakness but out of understanding. The dragons had waited, patient and calm, showing that gentleness could be stronger than weapons, that patience could be stronger than fear. Lena smiled slightly. She knew there would be challenges ahead. Some people would still be afraid. Some leaders would still doubt. But for the first time humanity had chosen the path that mattered most. They had chosen understanding. And above the city, dragons soared in the sky, not as conquerors but as neighbors, protectors and guides. Their hum filled the air, a gentle reminder that power and wisdom do not always belong to the strongest, but to those who choose patience, kindness and courage. Lena held her notebook tightly, watching the dragons circle above. She had drawn them for fun, for curiosity, for imagination. But now she had helped humanity make a choice that could change the world forever. The dragons would stay patient and watchful, waiting to teach, to protect and to guide. And humanity had chosen to listen. Years had passed since the first dragons had landed outside Lena Carter's school. The world had changed slowly but surely. The initial panic was now only a memory, replaced by cautious fascination and wonder. Humanity had learned to live alongside the dragons, though it had not been easy. Fear had lingered in some hearts, but patience, understanding and curiosity had grown stronger. Lena, older now, walked through her old schoolyard, her notebook tucked under her arm. The playground was quiet, but she knew it was alive with memory. Small dragons had made homes in nearby forests, mountains and even above the oceans. Some lived in orbit, helping humans explore space, while others chose to remain close to cities, acting as guardians. The children who once drew dragons in dirt and paper now grew up knowing they were not just stories, they were neighbors. A gentle hum filled the air. Lena looked up and saw a small dragon descending from the sky, wings folded neatly, eyes bright and curious. It landed lightly on the playground, careful not to crush the swings or benches. The dragon tilted its head, studying her. Lena smiled. "Hello, little one," she said softly. The dragon nudged her notebook with its snout, just as one had years ago when everything had begun. She knelt and traced a finger along the dragon's scales. Warmth pulsed under her touch. It was incredible how alive they felt. They were not pets. They were intelligent, wise, and full of memories older than humanity could imagine. They had chosen to stay not by force but because trust had been built. And humanity had honored that trust. Across the city, schools had added lessons about dragons. Children learned to read the hums, recognize the glowing symbols on their scales, and communicate in small ways. The dragons taught humanity about energy manipulation, healing, and even interstellar travel. They were teachers without speaking, guides without commanding. Humanity had gained something far greater than weapons or power. Lena paused near a fountain where children played. A small dragon swooped low, casting a shadow over the water, and the children laughed. One child pointed at the dragon and shouted, "It's helping me float my paper boat." The dragon tilted its wings, creating a gentle current of air that carried the boat across the fountain. The children clapped, and the dragon chirped softly as if pleased. The news had long stopped reporting fear. Now stories spoke of cooperation and discovery. Scientists worked alongside dragons, unlocking secrets of energy and light. Engineers studied the dragon's flight and resilience. Even artists found inspiration in their scales, wings, and eyes. Lena remembered how she had first drawn them carelessly on her notebook, unaware of the impact it would have. At night, the dragons in orbit sent gentle beams of light to the cities below, a quiet reminder of their presence. They did not demand attention. They did not strike fear. They simply existed alongside humanity, patient and watchful, guardians of a world that had chosen understanding over destruction. One evening, Lena stood on a rooftop, looking at the skyline dotted with lights and wings. Aurelian Vex, older now and larger than ever, hovered above the city watching carefully. Lena waved and the dragon dipped its head in acknowledgement. It was a silent friendship, built on trust and choice. She realized that no human or dragon had forced the bond. It had grown naturally, slowly, like a tree in sunlight. Lena opened her notebook. She had drawn more dragons over the years, sketches that reflected not just imagination but lessons learned. Each dragon she drew now was inspired by the one she had met. She held it against the night sky and for a moment she could feel the hum connecting through her thoughts, a bridge between imagination and reality. Humans had begun to explore the stars with dragons' guidance. Ships powered by energy once impossible were now traveling to distant planets. Communities on Earth had been rebuilt with care for the creatures that shared the world. Cities had learning spaces where humans and dragons could interact safely, exchanging knowledge, games, and stories. What had once been fear had become fascination, respect, and friendship. Lena thought back to the first day the dragons had arrived. She had been scared just like everyone else. But they had waited, showing patience that humanity had to match. Now, looking around at a city that thrived with dragons soaring above, humans learning, and children laughing, she understood something profound. Strength was not in fear, power, or control. Strength was in trust, patience, and understanding. A group of children ran past, drawing dragons in chalk on the pavement. A small dragon followed them, wings flapping gently, hovering above the street. Lena smiled. The dragons were teaching, watching, and protecting, but they were also part of everyday life. They had become neighbors, not strangers. Friends, not invaders. The city lights reflected on the dragon's scales, turning them into living constellations. Lena watched a small dragon perch on the rooftop beside her. She reached out, touching its snout. It hummed softly, vibrating through her hand. "We've come far," she whispered. The dragon seemed to understand, nuzzling her gently. As night deepened, the dragons lifted into the sky in a quiet display of wings and light. Humanity slept below, unaware of every detail, but safe because of the guardians who had chosen to stay. The bond between humans and dragons had become a part of life, natural and unforced. And Lena knew that it all began with a simple act of curiosity, a notebook, and the choice to draw dragons for fun. She looked at the stars, imagining the dragons flying among them. One day humans might follow, guided by those who had waited for them with patience and wisdom. Lena closed her notebook, smiling. The world was not perfect, but it was alive with possibility. And above it all, dragons and humans lived together, not as conquerors and conquered, not as masters and servants, but as neighbors, friends, and partners in a universe full of wonder.